So let's have a look at the HLOOKUP in action. Bear in mind that the HLOOKUP works exactly the same way as the VLOOKUP, except that your lookup table is stored horizontally as opposed to vertically. So using the HLOOKUP_sample sheet, we have a sales sheet in here, the first sheet in here, that has some sales information, salesman, and a number of empty columns where we're going to place our horizontal lookups, our HLOOKUPs. So the first HLOOKUP is going to work out what season, i.e. what season of the year, spring, summer, fall, or winter, each of these sales falls into. Now our seasons information is stored here in this season sheet, and we have each of the week numbers from week 1 all the way to 53 and the relevant season. So week 6 is actually in the middle of winter and week 31 is in summer. They are abbreviated: SU summer, F for fall, SP spring, and W for winter. Now you'll find that we've named this range as well. It makes the lookup formula so much shorter really to have a named range. And in the sales sheet here, we just need to figure out what week number this date falls into, take that value to our lookup table, and then return with the correct reference for the season. So we're in here, equals HLOOKUP, because the data is stored horizontally, and we want to look up in the first row. Open brackets. Our criteria is actually the week num, which is a function of that date. So Excel first works out what week we are in, takes that week number as our criteria, comma, to the lookup table, which is season. Notice how Excel gives you your named ranges in a drop list anyway, comma, which row would I like to return with? So we're always going to look up the value in the first row. So that's going to be the week number, and then return with whatever value is sat in row 2, comma, false, because we're still looking for that exact match. Has to be the correct week number, not 1.5 or 1.75. Return, and January the 1st is actually in winter. If I then replicate that formula to the bottom, we can see it finds the correct season for each particular date. So May 27 is in spring, lots of spring dates there, summer one there, July the 5th in summer, September 24th in the fall. So that's HLOOKUP criteria, which is actually a function of that cell. So work out the week number of the date, take that into your lookup table, second part of the HLOOKUP, and come back with the second row. So the value in the second row, it's got to be an exact match. This criteria has got to be exactly the same in the first row of the season named range. Okay, in the same sheet, you have the option here to add another lookup. So we need to calculate the commission earned for each salesman. And if we look at the salesman sheet, each salesman earns a different commission rate. That's the third row. Don't forget that. Back in the sales. So the commission earned by this salesman is going to be calculated by equals HLOOKUP, their name, into the salesman named range. Again, it's in the drop list, so you can find it very quickly, just in case you happen to have forgot what you called the range. This time we would like to bring back the value in the third row, and it has to be an exact match. Bob has to exist, spelt B-O-B, in the HLOOKUP table, and return, and that gives me 0.1 because Bob earns 10%. Now obviously that's not the full function, because that says he earns 10%, but it doesn't actually work out what 10% of 4,000 is. So I just need to tag on the end of there, multiplied by the sale, give me 400, bit of formatting, and it becomes $400. Replicate the formula all the way to the bottom, and it works out each person's correct commission rate. So Sue, on a sale of $14,762, earns $1,734. Not too bad. That's because Sue, if we have a look at the salesman, is on 11.75%. That works out the commission rate, uses the HLOOKUP to take the salesman's name into the salesman's table, bring back the values currently stored in row 3, which is their commission rate, and multiply that by the sale. Let's return the minimum commission, which is in the same table, so equals HLOOKUP, the salesman's name. That's my criteria. We take that to the salesman's table, and we bring back the value in the second row, We are looking for an exact match still. We've got to find Bob in that table. BO would not find him. BB would not find him. It has to be spelt Bob. And return brings back his minimum commission. And if we stick $1 on, it becomes formatted. And we can replicate that down, and you see that these are fairly static values. If it's Bob, he gets 50. If it's Sue, it's 100. Sue, it's 100, and Rita is 25. And you'll notice that the last column just checks these two cells, and if the minimum commission is actually below the commission earned, then they are given the minimum commission. I'm not sure that that actually happens ever. No. But just like the VLOOKUP, if you were to change any of the values in the lookup table, that would change the result of the formula, because the formula is constantly checking itself. So if we were to give our guys some minimum commission values, let's say 250 for Bob, 150 for Rita, and 200 for Sue, those would then feed into the sales, and you can see that the minimum commissions are now shot up. And where someone hasn't reached the minimum commission, for example here, Bob only got $50 on actual earned commission, but because his minimum is $250, he gets paid $250, even though that's half the sale. Well done, Bob. So this is HLOOKUP. Equals HLOOKUP, cell with the criteria in, the table reference, in our case a named range, the row you would like to return with back to the cell that does the looking up, and false to say that that criteria must exist exactly in that salesman's table.